Hey everyone, welcome to the Racers360 Autobahn Country Club full course track breakdown. This is a tough 19-turn long lap around here. So there's a lot of things to work through. We're going to go through corner by corner, give you everything that you need to know to set yourself up for a fast and safe lap around this really fun racetrack. So we're here on the short front straightaway going into turn one. Turn one's a long duration corner, and really trying to roll in entry speed and delay when we pick up initial throttle is quite important, right? So we're coming in here. You can see our very first flag station is going to be right above here. Start finish, and we're looking for our brake markers, which is on the grass on the right side of the road. You can see here our drivers get a pretty good brake marker. They're just about the 3 board. Most cars you're going to be starting off probably around the 4 board, working towards 3 board, depending on how much grip you've got, how much horsepower you've got. There's a lot of wide range. But going into the brake zone here, almost immediately, we want to start trailing off. You should feel like by the 2 board, just before the turning point, you should be starting to slowly release the brakes. That doesn't mean get off the brakes, but we're getting off of that heavy brake pressure. And you can see we have very different lines between the car in front of us and the car we're in right now in terms of turning points, angles, all of that. This is going to be a little bit more of a driver preference line, but I kind of like the line our driver is currently using right now. It allows him to roll a little bit more entry speed, use a little bit of the camber at the apex point in here, and then trail braking towards the outside of the road, and then ideally starting to apply the throttle as we come back towards the second apex in turn 1 here. We do want to be apexing close to the start of the apex curve, start to the middle of the apex curve. We want to be back to full throttle by about here. Let the car be free on exit, and then hustle it back to the left side of the road for turn 2. Now, into turn 2, make sure your eye discipline is there. We already want to be looking past to the braking point towards the turning point here. You've just come through a long duration left-hand turn 1. You're hustling the car back to the left. It's very easy to be too late and looking back to the right side of the road. So make sure you've got your eyes by now focused in at the apex point towards turn 2. So turn 2 is a late apex corner. It's a long duration corner as well. You're going to be able to see here our driver's going to apex slightly too early. That allows them to gain a little bit of time on entry, but we're going to lose time to the car in front because of that apexing too early. Let's just play this full speed and we'll come back through it here. So we're coming in, you see the car in front turns a little bit later. Apex is a little bit later than our driver. We catch up, but because of that we understeer wide, and now we're going to lose time to the car in front because of that early apex. So make sure as we're entering turn 2 here, see how there's not a great reference point for turn-in. It's going to be the best point that we like to use is where the grass starts to come in here and then starts to go more parallel with the car. Once you get about your front nose to the whole car past that point, we're starting our turn-in. Slow hands as always. We want to make sure that we're not late in the extremely hard, slow, progressive turn-in point. And see how the car in front, they're going to apex. Mostly, they don't really hit the apex. They miss it by about a tire width or so. But we want to be apexing the back end of this curb here. So really from about this point to this point is where our apex should come. And if you feel like you are running out of road on exit here and you're not able to get back to significant throttle right about that apex point, it's because you probably apexed too early or you picked up the throttle too early. So we want to be apexing back into this curve, and that's where our throttle should come in. You should have a car angle at this point that's looking more down the road, not towards the exit here. So that'll help you avoid this understeer at corner exit that's affecting us. Through the back end of turn 2, we're just having kind of one nice long steering input, and then we want to hold it a little bit to the right here. Notice how we're not perfectly to the right already. You want to let the car drift off by about a half car width tire to about a full tire width or so, but then work it back to the right side of the road before we kind of flick it back in for turn 3. Similar note, make sure your eyes are already looking in towards the apex point for turn 3. We've just come again through a long duration right-hander. It's easy to have your eyes too low. So get those eyes back in, flicking it in, rolling that speed, apexing about middle of the curve for turn 3, bam, back to full throttle, let the car use all of the roads, so we're maximizing our run down to turn 4. So into turn 4, we're going to apex a little bit too early here with our driver again. It's a pretty light brake zone here. It's a very much an entry speed corner. You can see the turn-ins coming right about the one board from the car in front of us. And we want to be apexing about a half car length later than our driver is here. About middle of the curve, that's where our apex comes in. That's where our throttle starts to feed in. Let the car use all of the road on exit. Our driver does a great job of getting out to the corner exit, getting that run to turn 5. So into turn 5, we're going to have a light brake zone here. We're not very hard on the brakes, probably like a 4-pedal or so, 3-pedal. And then we want to start turning in just about the one board. Our drivers, see how our drivers started their turning point here. We're just ever so slightly starting to turn it in, and we're before the one board. Because of that, we're going to apex a little bit early here, and that's going to cause understeer on exit. See how we're apexing the start of this curve? And look at this understeer on exit. They're not able to unwind the steering wheel until they're pretty much out at the exit curve. So I'd like to see our driver delay that turn-in point just by a car length or so. Now we're starting our turn-in point, apexing about more the first third of the curve rather than the very start of the curve. That's going to allow you to start unwinding the steering wheel already so we can maximize our run into turn 6, which is kind of like awkward brake zone into 6. So into 6, we're not going to be able to straight line brake for a long period here. So we're going to try to get the car turned in, positioned towards the outside of the road where we want to go. Our driver does a really good job of that here. And then we're going to be braking towards the outside of the track. And then as we're starting to turn it in harder into that kind of real apex for turn 6, we want to start trailing off the brakes here. So as you turn in, trail, off, go. So we're maximizing the road on exit through the turn 7 sweeper here. Eyes are up, apex in the start of the curve. Let the car be free, floating out, getting ready for turn 8. See how here in turn 8, our driver's braking just inside the 4 board. That's going to be where most drivers are going to start starting your weekend off before the 4 board, trying to work inside of that depending on your car type as well. Harder brake zone, downshifting. We want to start a slow turn-in point here, and it's a corner that we really want to trail brake deep into. See how our driver, again, is going to have a too early of an apex point. They're going to apex the start of this apex curve, and that means, look how they're really fighting. You can actually see they have to add steering wheel as they come out to the corner exit. So we're here apexing. See how they're having to add that steering input? We want to make sure we're avoiding that. So if you feel like you're having to do that, you're probably apexing too early, and you're probably picking up the throttle too early. So make sure we have a little bit later of a turning point. There's no great visual here in turn 9. So just what we're going to have to do is rely on depth perception and making sure we're apexing the middle of the curve, not the beginning of it. So our apex point should come right in here. That's where we are, the middle of the curve. That way you can start to unwind the steering wheel as you apex and start to exit. So right now, bam, getting the throttle, unwind the steering wheel, short square to full throttle before turn 10 here. And then, turn 9 here, and then turn 9, we want a long trail brake into, and again, a later apex. Had my corners confused there a little bit. So, this is the real turn 9. We want to apex the back end of the curve. We have to try and hold it right to set up for turn 10, and turn 10 leads onto a long straightaway. So the most important thing here is maximizing our run out of turn 10. That's our priority. To be able to do that, we need to keep it to the right side of the road. To do that without losing as much time or losing as little amount of time as possible through turn 9, we want a later turn-in point, and we want to trail brake deep into the corner. The trail brake keeps more weight on the front end, gets that grip, and helps that rotation. So notice how our driver right now has their right side tires on the inside of this first black kind of section here of asphalt. I'd like to see their right tires actually be more around here, and then we're going to be, the next point to focus in on is apexing the back end of the curve, not the start of the curve. So coming in here, later turn-in point, right side of this with your right side tires, apexing the back end of the curve, trail braking all the way through here, short square to full throttle. That's going to allow you to, the trail braking later apex will allow you to keep it a little bit further to the right here. I'd like to see them about a half car width. You don't need to be perfectly to the right side of the road, but a little bit further right is what I would like to see. And the trail brakes allow you to roll more speed through 9. I almost don't care where we pick up the throttle. Short squirt of full throttle between 9 and 10. Off as we turn into 10. And then apexing, that's where we're getting aggressive back to throttle. Use all the road on exit, and then slowly work your way back to the left side of the road to set up for 11, 12 section. Again, 11 is going to be a trail braking corner as well. So we're braking, let's see here, just inside the 5 board with our driver. And we want to trail brake almost past the apex because we want to hold it just a little bit to the right here to set up for 11. So see how our driver's going to apex about the start of the curve. I like that. The next section is going to be very car dependent. So the car in front of us is going to use all of the road, and they're going to flick it back through turn 12. That car seems to be able to hold it full throttle. So the way we like to teach this at Racers360 is to start your weekend off being a little bit more conservative, holding it right to set up for turn 12. And what our goal is to be flat out through turn 12. So let's start conservative. As the weekend goes on and as you get more laps, start to let the car start to carry a little bit more speed through 11 and start to let it roll a little bit further out to the left, a little bit further out to the left. And our goal is to see, can we use all of the road out of 11 and still be full throttle through turn 12? And what we're trying to do is use a little bit more road, until you can no longer be flat out through turn 12. If you reach that point, we know, hey, we need to back it up a little bit, keep it further right so that we can continue to be flat through turn 12, and that's where you find the limit. And you might find in your car, hey, I can use all the road and be flat through turn 12. Go for it. But let's work up to it. Some cars will be, some cars won't be. So it's going to be really dependent on your car and where you are as a driver as well. Most important thing, though, is being full throttle through turn 12, letting the car also be free out over here, not scrubbing any additional speed as we get back to the left side of the road to set up for 13, 14 section here. So into 13, we're going uphill, and then into the brake zone, we're going back downhill as well. So just remember, a little bit less grip into the brake zone here. So we're starting to go, like we see, pretty steep downhill. We also know downhill corners require a little bit earlier of a turn-in point than we're used to. So we're turning in just past the 1 board. We want to apex about just past the start of the curve here. So not quite middle of the curve, but really about a half car length or so past the apex curve. That's where our apex should come. Let the car use most of the road. Yes, we want to hustle it back to the right side of the road, but we don't need to be perfectly back to the right. So if you find yourself coming out of 13 and being already perfectly aligned to the right side of the road, you definitely have overslowed the corner. So I want to end up about middle of the road on the exit of 13. I'd like to see you hustle it back about where our driver is right now, is pretty solid, and then a little bit early of a turning point through 14. See how our driver didn't lose much time to the car in front. In fact, gained time to the car in front, even though he didn't get further to the right. It's because he brought in more speed through 13, and that extra half car width or so to the right doesn't really help you through 14. It's more important to just be slower with your hands as you turn into 14. It's easy to upset the car. So just make sure you've got your eyes looking into 14, slow hands, use all of the track on exit, and then once again, we're hustling the car back to the right for 15. But notice how now it's kind of the opposite. Our driver goes too hard to the left here, and the driver in front, ends up middle of the road where we want to see it. And because they're smoother, they're able to roll more speed through 15. Our driver hustles it and then flicks it back to the right. Because of that, it has a moment and then doesn't really gain time. What's important through this whole 13, 14, 15 section is smoothness on the steering wheel. You don't need to be perfectly all the way to the outside and then have to flick it back to the apex point here. Work more on being smoother and making sure your eyes are looking forward. The most critical part of almost any track, but especially here at Autobahn with these long duration, kind of complex corners here where you're going from one corner to the next and long left-handers into short right-handers or long right-handers, is going to be having that eye discipline and making sure you're looking through the next corner, through to the next apex. Let the car be free on exit here out of 15 as we approach down to turn 16. Braking about the 3.5 board for 16 here. Let's take a look at where our apex should come. Our driver, let's see here, is going to apex middle of the curb, but notice here, but we're running out of road on exit. See how we're still not able to unwind the steering wheel until we're halfway through the exit curve? That immediately means, hey, we've apexed a little bit too early. And you can see here where both cars are fighting for traction. So the car in front here hits this apex, and that's why they lose the ability to really put the power down aggressively. So we know for most cars, we're going to avoid that apex curve. And then our car, the one we're on board with, apex is more the start of this curve, but then is pointed in the wrong direction and can't unwind the steering wheel. So we want to kind of avoid both of these lessons. So try to avoid that curve unless you're in a very soft car, but that's where we want to apex. We want to apex the back end of this curve, just not touching it, and that's what's going to provide the best run out of here, which is the most important thing. This is more of an exit speed corner, so avoiding this curve. Both cars got to it. You can see the car in front is already sideways. We're understeering. Neither is the perfect execution through there. Slowly working it back to the right side of the road, set up for the 17, 18, 19 section here. So now we're braking right about the 3 board. I should already be looking in towards the apex for 17. Trailing it in. No great turn-in marker here, but once again, our drivers get a little bit early of a turn-in point. So good bit past the 1 board is where we're starting to turn in. And once again, we want to now apex the start of the apex curve, which comes right where that car in front of us is. This is the start of that apex curve. That's where we want to apex. See, our driver's too early to apex here. And then we run out of road on exit and really fight the car because of that. So we want to have that late apex so that we can have a smoother run back to the left side of the road, set up for this long duration 18, 19, which almost feels more like one long corner than 2 separate corners. Once again, a little bit later of an apex point, but you can see the car in front misses the apex. It's really important to get down there in turn 18 here, right at the end of the curve. That's where we want to start to feed in that throttle. Let the car be free out over here, and make sure your eyes are looking through 19. Use all of the road in between 18, 19 so we can set up and have open that radius for 19. Starting to try to work back to that full throttle. Let the car be free. Use all the road so you're not scrubbing speed on the front straightaway. And that's a lap around the full course at Autobahn Speedway. So thanks for joining us for our Racers 360 track breakdown. We hope that you'll come and check out Racers360.com, where we have a ton of free articles written from the very best coaches in the business on everything from driving techniques to racecraft and keeping safe on the racetrack, as well as you can have the ability to work with the very best coaches in the business personally with you for starting at only $99. So what you would do is create an account, and then you'll be able to send in your onboard videos, just like this one. And you can work with Mike Skeen, Memo Gidley, Jade Buford, some of the best coaches in the world. And what they'll do is they'll watch your onboard lap from a full race, from 1 lap, whatever it could be, at any track, at any car, and they'll go turn by turn and give you actionable advice, not only on just your lines, but also like driving techniques. They'll give you goals on what to execute on to make sure that you've got an actual way to start improving as a driver. It's really a phenomenal service, and you know when you go to Racers360, you'll be working with the very best coaches in the world at affordable prices. So hopefully we'll see you at Racers360.com. Enjoy your track time at Autobahn. We look forward to seeing you at the track soon.